welcome to Shifting Religious Concepts. We are SRC. So pleased to be here with you today for a novel look at the Bible and what it means for all of us. My name is Mark Thomas. I'll be moderating today's program. And along with our SRC panel, we will continue with our series titled Revelation Revealed. During the show, remember that we encourage you to ask questions or make comments by raising your hand in the Zoom feature, and we'll do our best to answer those questions as we go along. Our panel, as always, are Nala D., Archie Sanders, and Dr. Kadar Griffo. If you've attended our broadcast or watched our YouTube videos, you know that these three all have their own unique perspective on the Bible. Listen closely as they explain how the book of Revelation relates to our physical bodies and our spiritual energy, that this book, through all its symbolism, teaches powerful lessons about our true selves. So, okay, we've been gone 2 weeks and well-deserved rest. Everybody looks rested, changed their clocks. So at least we're on that track, but here we are. We're back to reveal the Bible the way it was intended by the ancient storytellers. Often before our broadcast, we like to present the audience with just a few words to get our collective compass pointed in the right direction. And today, Anal has volunteered to bring us a message and to kind of lead us in from our vacation. Go ahead, Anala.
First, let me just say good morning to everyone. And actually, I didn't volunteer. I think Mark Porter kind of pushed me into this whole thing. But I think it's important that we just kind of step back and look at why Revelation and why are we taking our time and unpacking Revelation the way that we are. SRC will continue to unpack the book of Revelation. We've been doing it and we're going to do that. And I know it seems like a long time, but the information that we are delivering is just mind-boggling. It's things that I didn't know. And I'm just glad that we're unpacking it in this way. And I'm learning something every time. So we just want to take a short pause to just talk about it, remind us of who we are and why the book of Revelation should be vital to each one of us. The chakra chart that we have been showing you and demonstrating to you is one of the ways that we are unpacking Revelation. And that chart is meant to provide you with a visual of the areas that we should all be tapping into, while at the same time alerting us to the power within each one of us and how we can manage that power. And now let us be clear. SRC are not saying and not declaring that we possess some holy power, something that you don't have. We don't have any power above any other person. We point to the truth. And we want you to know that we all have access to that same truth and that same power. And that power is within each and every one of us. We at SRC, we've come to understand and know that we are gods wearing flesh suits. And we can't beat around that. We just have to be honest about that. You know, I know that people don't want to say that because they're afraid that when they say that people are going to step away, don't want to hear it, but we must tell you the truth. We are gods wearing suits of flesh. We're not Christ personified as a man, but Christ is within us. We possess Christ within. And that Christ is the creative power of God operating in every human being. Let me say that again. The Christ that you read about, the Christ that Revelation is talking about, that Christ, we possess that Christ. And Christ is the creative power of God operating within every human being. You can go to 1 Corinthians 1:24. Go read it for yourself. That's 1 Corinthians 1:24. It talks about that Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. And that Christ lives within us. And then in 2 Corinthians, read it for yourself, 2 Corinthians 5:16. It states that we should know or understand that Christ is not in the flesh. It talks about that. When you break it down and understand what it's saying, it's telling you that that Christ is not in the flesh. So yes, so he's not a man walking around. Christ is within us. And now let's reflect on the chakra chart that we've been sharing with you when we do these live broadcasts. Every person born in this flesh suit started at the bottom of the chart. And I'm going to share the chart with you in a second. Every one of us started at the bottom of the chart. We all began life desiring our basic needs to be satisfied. Nutrition, safety, security, all of those things. As a baby, we started out wanting milk from our mothers and wanting food from our families. We wanted to know that we were secure. We all start at the bottom of the chart. As we mature, we become more vibrant, and we should all start to ascend up this chart. We should ascend up this chart wanting to reach high levels. However, we do not all choose to ascend, and we know that. Some people want to stay at the lower level. So now I want to share my chart with you because I think it's important that you see exactly what I'm talking about. So as I was mentioning, every one of us start at the bottom of this chart right here. We all start there. We want the security, we want to survive, we want our basic needs to be met. And then what we do is we start to travel up this chart. We start to develop relationships. We start to develop emotions and things like that. And so we travel all the way up. We travel, and that's what we should be doing. But we do know that some people don't travel up. Some people stay in this area. Some people stay right here. They never feel like their basic needs are being met. They stay right in here. They may make it to this area here, staying in the relationship area, the emotions, sexuality, and all that stuff. They've never let go of some of the past stuff that they don't need to continue to hold on to. They hold on to those things. They get right here. Sometimes they make it here where they should have self-control and purpose and strive for perfection and desire great things, vitality and all that. But most of the time, we stay in this area right here. And that's why we wanted to show you this chart to you, because this chart is going to show you that if you move above those areas, how much more successful you can be. Now, SRC unpacked a full series on imagination some time ago. Now, with this chakra chart that I'm showing you right now, you can identify the area of your body where imagination yields its power. And that area is right in here where imagination yields its power. The third eye, that is where your creative power of God dwells, right in here. It is the third eye that you will sense intuition, service, imagination, focus on the good and understand what to do. So when you are sitting there and you're meditating, you're not just sitting there meditating, you are actually focusing in this area right here, because this is where the creative power lies. And when you think about Christ, do not think of a man who walked around on this earth. Instead, focus on your third eye right here. When you are focusing on what you want, focus right here. This is where the energy is. Focus on your third eye. This is where the creative power of God lives. You want to close your eyes and focus on the right side of your brain. We are told that Christ sits on the right hand side of the Father. We are told this all the time. We said that, you know, Christ is and I'm stopping the share now. We're told that Christ sits on the right hand side of our brain. We're told that everything that we create comes out of our subconscious, and it does. So when you think about this, if you notice where the third eye is, third eye sits on the top, and the subconscious sits below the crown. And we saw that the crown was at the top, and that the crown is where the throne of God is. We also told that that one cannot get to God, can't get to God unless you go through Christ. Now, I could never understand that, but now this makes common sense to me, because when we think about the location of the third eye, and I just want to share this one more time. I think this is important. I got to share this one more time. Okay, so when you think about when you're coming up from the bottom here, as we are moving up these chakras, it makes sense now that you can't get to the crown right here. can't get through the crown right here unless you go through this third eye. So now it makes sense when we hear people say that you have to go through Christ to get to God, or and in this case right here, get to that crown. So as we ascend through the chakras, we must learn to manage or conquer these areas before we can even move into the area where we get to wear the crown. And as we ascend into our maturity, we should reach the point where we have earned the right to wear that crown. See, you don't just get the crown. You have to earn that right to get to that crown. And this is the highest connection that we can reach or ascend to. It's the spiritual connection or position that we all should seek. This is the level where one experiences agape love. Now, agape love does not come naturally. It's a choice. Agape love is a choice that we make to serve others with humility, like we're doing right now with SRC. We're serving others in humility. We're not getting paid for doing all this, and we're doing this. We're getting up. We're putting these shows together because we want you to know the truth, and we're not expecting anything in return. We haven't asked anybody once to make a donation. We do ask you to advertise on our show, but you're going to get something out of that. So this type of love enables us to love the unlovable, serve people at their deepest need, whether they deserve it or not. So when you get to that crown, when you wear that crown, that's how you are able to do something like that. You're able to love without being loved back. And when we ascend to the high chakra level, one chooses only to see the good in all. When we can choose to see the good in all, you're going to see good in your world. This person, when they reach that crown, this person is capable of counting it all joy. When one earns the crown, love, peace, thoughtful harmony, and focus will rule every thought for them. Do not think that I'm referring to one that transcends to earn the crown. I'm not saying that you got to die before you earn this crown. I'm talking about one that's alive. This level can be reached while you are living in this 3D atmosphere. And I can hear someone asking right now, well, what happens if I don't ascend up and get the crown? What's going to happen to me then? You said that some people don't make it up there. So what's going to happen to me? Well, I'm just say this to you. You can take it and you may not believe it, but it's just the way it is. If you don't make it to the crown, you're going to get to do it all back over again. You know, and I'm not talking about going to hell, because there's no hell. Hell is not a place, it's a state of being. But remember, we are reminded of what was told to us before we even entered into this world. And these are the things in the Bible are placed there for us to remember who we are and what we should know before we ever entered into this atmosphere. In John 6:39, it says, remember what you already know within. Well, this is what I'm paraphrasing that. So John 6:39 is telling us to remember what we already know. And it says this, and this is the Father's will, which hath set me, that of all which he hath given me, I should lose nothing, but raise it up again at this last day. This is a reminder, my friends. This is a reminder from within. No one is lost. You're not going to be lost. The I am who is within each and every one of us is reminding us that we will not be lost. On the last day, which is the last state of your being, in whatever plane or fear you happen to be in, this you will continue to come back, continue to live, continue to come back on in another plane or somewhere else until you reach that crown, because no one is going to be lost. Knowing this, why? Because you know this, why not run the race right now and cross the finish line and obtain the crown? They weren't talking in the Bible. It wasn't telling us to run a race to get to heaven. It was telling us to run the race to get to the crown while we are on this earth, so we don't have to repeat this ever again. Like Tamisha likes to say to me, she said, I ain't coming back. She said all the time, I ain't coming back. So I ain't coming back either. So I'm going to run this race. I'm going to know who I am. I am going to tap into the creative power that God has given me to do what I need to do while I'm on this earth, because I ain't coming back. Send it back over to you.
All right.
Wonderful.
So I won't be seeing you here next time then. Well, I appreciate that and all. That was inspirational to say at least. Anybody got any comments? Anybody, Archie?
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I know I'm gonna have to get going here in this here in a second, but that was awesome, Anala. We got to know, and I'm a preacher. I'm that title I earn, and I love people. That's the thing about anyone, a police officer, a fireman, anybody. They love what they're doing, and they put their all into it to help everybody that they could possibly help. We must understand that spirituality is what is causing us to achieve these things. We are all spiritually connected. Not only with our spirituality help us stay connected with ourselves and keeps us sane, so we don't go insane. That's why we meditate with that third eye. Take time to stop, get everything out your mind, and see for yourself that, wait a minute, I have power also. I must say that, I've told people many times, and I've seen it as, you got to come to the preacher. The preacher got to tell you what God said and how to get to where God wants you to be. God is in you. I'm glad that I learned that God is in me. He's in me. I love what I'm doing. I love to help people. I don't try to hurt people. Sometimes we're hurt by the truth, but grab them bootstraps and pull them up and search and find out what I said and come back and either tell me that you were right or you were wrong, and then I'll do the same thing. But love is drawing us all together, y'all. Our spirituality, you all have it. What we're telling y'all, you all have the spirit in you.
All right. That was good. That was great, Archie. Thank you. Anybody else? No other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on. We're going to continue talking about the book of Revelation, of course. Let me get where I was. So very briefly, just to sum up the last session a couple of weeks ago, we went into depth on the first 4 verses of chapter 6. The symbolism of the white and the red horse, I hope you remember, was explained. Archie introduced us to parthenogenesis, a word that I didn't know until then, which is the idea of virgin births. And Dr. Griffo spoke on how this is an old idea and how this is part of ancient lore for many cultures. The panel then talked about lust and how the Bible referred to the forbidden fruit and how the fruit is still tempting us to this day, of course. And all this symbolism has to do with specific parts of our bodies and the 7th chakra, especially the lower chakra in these first verses of chapter 6. So, Brother Archie, last show we left it off where you spoke of the struggle against temptation that is waged against us all. This brought to mind in chapter 5 where the angel says, and this kind of relates back to what Anala was talking about too, where the strong angel says, "Who is worthy to open the book?" You then read verses 5 and 6. So today, let's set the stage by remembering that these lessons are for the initiate, that is himself having a revelation that while he is in spirit, this is the story of Revelation. The 4 beasts in this chapter 6 repeatedly tell Apollonius to come and see or witness what is being revealed. So Archie, let's start from verse 5. There is a black horse and a rider with balances. What's this seal about? What is this symbolism?
Okay, as you know, we read verse 5 and 6, which said, when he opened the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd being saying, "Come." Behold, a black horse came out. The divinity who was riding him had a balance in his hand. I heard as it were a voice in the midst of the 4 beings saying, a ration of wheat for a denarius, and 3 rations of barley for a denarius, and do scant justice to the olive oil and the vine. Now, from what I found out here, this is talking about the cardiac chakra. This relates to the heart, and we were just talking. Now I was just speaking of love and heart. This relates to the cardiac chakra that is open. It corresponds to Libra of the zodiac, and the region of this somatic division is the weigher and the discursive lower mind. think about it, the heart weighs things. When you start talking about cardiac, this it, right there, it weighs things. You begin to think about, okay, what am I doing here? What, this is where do you see where it says balance, love, connection, compassion, hope, forgiveness? This is where we begin to be able to love each other, even those who some folks say is unlovable. When the person themselves reaches this point to where you deal with the heart, it's just like I said, I do this because I love to help people. I love people. I don't care if you're mean, nasty, evil, or whatever. I know that you don't have to be that way. But believe me, we're aware of what we do and how we deal with people. But this is where the heart is, the cardiac chakra is, and this is open. And it says here that no actual thinking process occurs in the heart. Now, that's something to think about, isn't it? It says a distinction is drawn between the spiritual mind or pure intellection and the unspiritual mind, or that portion of the intellectual nature that is tainted by psychic emotions and carnal desire. In other words, between the mind that reflects the light which comes from above, from the nous, and the mind that absorbs the influences that come from below, from the animal nature. This is where that is. This lower intellectual sphere may include the greatest culture with admirable attainments in scientific research and the acquisition of knowledge along conventional lines, yet with little or no spiritual insight or philosophic depth of thought. Hence, it is depicted in the allegory as a semi-famine, a scarcity of rations. And let me try to break that down there, because there's a lot said. There's a lot that happens in that area. But according to the research, it says that there is no actual thinking done there. But it goes on to say down here that that this lower intellectual sphere may include the greatest culture with admirable attainments in scientific research and acquisition of knowledge. Think about it. And a lot of times we say, well, I'm thinking about, we say, well, I've told people a lot of times, and when I was running the church, that, the Lord desires for you to do so and so and so, and because based on my studying and what the scriptures are saying. And, most of the time my answer from them is, well, let me think about it. Let me see what God says about it. So now when people tell me that, I know they really either don't want to do what I'm doing, or they already have their mindset on what they want to do. In this area here, this is where things are weighed. It says the people that are not willing to spend money, they talks about the denarius for the wheat, and you're paying something, you're measuring out something. They're not willing to make a decision right there, or you see that they're trying to decide in that area there, or what they're going to do.
Let me ask you a question. Let me just put a question on the table. Anybody can answer it, I guess. We know that in the Bible it says that you will get your heart's desire.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get your heart's desire. So so in that area, what is it? How do we conquer that area? Because we just saw on the screen there in that heart area, we saw that in the heart, that's where the balance and love and connection and compassion and hope and forgiveness. So are we supposed to kind of clean all that rubbish out so that we can have the love and compassion, and so that we can get the things in our heart? Because the scripture does tell us that. So it's not, you're going to get, it says, I will give you the desires of your heart. And that's also a place where hope is. So tell us, how does that work? How does a person reach that area? What do they need to do in that area so they can get their heart's desire? What do they need to do?
That's wonderful, Anala. I like that, because as you're talking, it reminds me of all that has been going on in the White House and all that there. Delight thyself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Delight is the key. You see what I said about firemen, policemen, whatever your desire is, whatever it is that you really love to do, get really into it. Dig down into it. It's just like a researcher, a person that really wants to know the truth. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he gives you the desires of your heart. Because if I delight myself in something, I work on it continuously. I work all the knots out and the bumps out, and I find out everything about it. It's like my craft, like a musician that really loves to play. They get down into what it is that they want to do. And I think you heard the story about me as a computer technician, how that's all I wanted to do when I was a little teen, when I was in high school. I always wanted to work on electronic gear, and I worked on everybody's. And so in high school, I began to work on everybody's stuff. Take it apart.
So when you delight yourself in the Lord, Archie, so when you delight yourself in the Lord, what you're saying, because we looked up the word Lord in one of our past segments. So they're not saying delight yourself in somebody, in the sky. No, something in the sky. So delight yourself in the authority within you. Delight that. Is that what?
He's in you. God, see, that's the thing. You have a knowledge. Delight yourself in the Lord. We're not saying delight yourself out in someone outside of you, but in you, because God is in you, your hope and glory. That word hope. The only reason that we can get to the places that we want to get to, we are focusing on what it is that we desire. And folks don't understand that you get that desire. If you only focus on you, we made a grand mistake. We did when we were praying, and we back a while ago before you was in camp there, and we looked at something the wrong, but we focused on being there instead of not being there. If what you focus on, baby, is coming. That's why if I have something against Mark and I need to talk to Mark, I need to focus on Mark and I having a pleasant conversation. You understand? The desire comes out of us because, see, if I focus on, oh no, I'm going to tear him up when I'm going to give him a piece of my mind, that is what is going to happen. And I'm not saying it to him. He don't hear me. But that is what I'm focusing on. If I focus on, okay, we're going to get this down, we're going to lay this on the table, we're going to talk man to man, we're going to act like we are intelligent and respect each other, that is what will happen. Delight yourself in the Lord.
So let me ask the question, and maybe Dr. Griffo might want to chime in on this one. What do they mean when they say a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny? What is that? Are they saying everything's not going to be real cheap, or what? What is this really telling us?
For me, it's dealing with the 4 seasons or the 4 cardinal points. When you're dealing around the fall time, or when Libra actually comes into effect, that's the harvest season. That's when you're having your grapes are being harvested for the wine, and your corn and things like that to make oil. So what you're looking at is they're telling you about the 4 seasons. Again, when it talked about the horse, and they had the different horses. If you notice throughout the Bible, Jesus came into the city on an ass, which is a horse. The sun always travels by horse. Each cardinal point, for the fall, the winter, the spring, and the summer is always preceded by a horse. So, for example, Sagittarius, right before Capricorn comes up, is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a horse. Before Aries comes up is Pegasus. Pegasus is a constellation that's right by Aries. The unicorn with Cancer, the Monosaurus or with Libra. So what they was doing was looking at the sun and looking at the cardinal points and the astrological signs, and each one of them was preceded by a horse. This is why when you look at a lot of those ancient older movies where they have these guys riding on chariots. They, you know, in a lot of cases, they're pulled by 4 horses because it represents the sun, but it also represents the sun at various aspects of the year. And at this particular point, it's talking about when the sun is at the harvest period, or Libra, or the balance of scales. So that's what I get from it.
And Pastor Archer, what does that do for us to know that information about the wheat and the penny and all? What does that do for the people that's our audience listening in? So what should they do? What does, when I read this, what is that doing for me?
Well, what I'm hearing from Dr. Griff there is speaking to you of the seasons. Now, within us, we sort of go through these types of things within us. You understand? Within us, we are going from hot to cold to warm to freezing to, you understand that Apollonius was very brilliant to put this in a way that some seen it literally, and then there was those who knew the secrets about what he was talking about.
It wasn't secret.
Within us, how we are acting within ourselves, how we are constantly changing within ourselves all the time. And we need to know that. We have to know that. I have to know it, because I was a mean, terrible fella. And I had to get away from that. The church couldn't make me do it. Now, I granted that just by going to church and following their rules, I calmed down, because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't do and that wouldn't work with being in the church. That's when I first got in, you understand? So, but we don't understand. Most of us, I didn't understand. I didn't understand how those things changed in me when the summer came and when the spring came. Things happen during those seasons. Think about what happened in those seasons. We are basically going through the same thing as a human.
So so when it talks about how and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine, what are they referring to there?
Again, you're dealing with, if you remember, like in the earlier broadcast, we talked about the Christos, the myrrh, the myron, the shemen, whatever, word that we use based off of our particular background. That is the oil, that cerebral spinal fluid that comes through those ventricles and descends down Jacob's ladder and down into the cave, and then it resurrects and comes back up. So that's the oil that we cannot afford to waste. That is the oil that we cannot afford to misuse. As and I know you just recognized my allusion to that story about wasting that oil. So and I'm not trying to get too far of Pastor Archie, but as you see it in chapter 7, it talks about death, because winter is the death season. So everything dies off in that season. So as through our bodies, when we, as Pastor Archie was alluding to, when we go through these phases in our lives, then we go through, as he was saying, the 4 seasons. When we come to spring, that is the best season. That's why Passover was always great with the children of Israel, because Passover represented when the sun passed from the winter time into the spring, and then everything came back to life. So then that's exactly what Pastor Archie is going into, exactly right, and exactly what I've studied and what I have as information as well. So on that note, I'm gonna pass it back to Pastor Archie.
All righty then.
That's good. That's good. I like that.
Yes.
Good. That's good. And I'm hoping this is plain enough for everyone to grasp. And I think that's why we're taking our time, because even with my wife, I share the things with her, and it helps me to understand how someone else is receiving what we're saying. So that's going to
but one of the things that people want, I know for me, when you can tell me something, but I want to know what it's going to do for my life. And that's what we want to, that's what we want our audience to see. And I think that's what all of us are doing, is we want to tell you, when we read something and break it down, what does it mean to you? How's it going to help you in your everyday life? Go back. I'm sorry, Pastor Archie.
No, you good. You good. You don't have to be sorry like that, because because see, that's we love what we're doing, and the only way that you're going to really help people is to love them beyond how you see them. You might not see them in a lovable state, but because we are lovable ourselves and we love what we're doing, we're going to help you anyway. It goes on to the next verse 7 and 8. It says, when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth being saying, come. Behold, a dun horse came out. The divinity who was riding him, his name was Death, and the unseen went along with him. To them was given authority over the fourth of the earth to kill with sword, famine, death, and by the wild beasts of the earth. Wow. And Doc just spoke on that. Dr. Griffo just spoke on that. But this is the chakra, the Longio. I guess that's with that thing in your I'm not too much on medical, but that's it's a nerve system somewhere in the doc that when we talk about the Longio chakra. Can you show that, Anala? Okay, that section is that it says the highest of those belonging strictly to the sympathetic nerve system, the ones above it being in the brain. So Dr. Griffo may can explain that a little better as far as that it's an internal body part, but maybe he can explain it to us a little better concerning that.
Where are you? Which chakra you're on?
Just the laryngeal chakra. It deals with the sympathetic nerve system. The one that looks like the petal, the roses. It's in the
It's in the sacral area.
Yes, it's in the it's the sympathetic nerve system, and it's in the brain. It's those lines in the brain.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So what we have a bunch of ganglia inside of our bodies in different areas. One that most of us are more familiar with is called the solar plexus. And some people has defined that as the place of the sun, but it's really just a gang of nerves that are right in the center of our bodies. But as you go up your body, you also find other ganglia as well. So these nerve centers that exist within us, of course, are connected to those 12 cranial nerves, as well as one particular ganglia is in the back of the throat area or the back of the brain area, in what we call the cerebellum. And next to the cerebellum is what they call in Latin arbor vitae. Arbor vitae means tree of life. So when you're dealing with this knowledge about the tree of life in the Bible, where it looks like a tree, this actual arbor vitae in Latin, but it's a part of the brain and it means tree of life. It looks like an actual tree of life. So when you're dealing with death and you're dealing with despair and etc., you're going to be dealing with the fact that you have not raised that consciousness level up, and that tree of life is not being activated because it comes right up over what we call the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve comes here and comes down and goes down into the stomach, and it's the airflow as well, but it crosses over. As we know, this is a cross. So when that thing crosses back over, you go from dead, or I'm sure Pastor Archie would catch this, from dead to a living perpendicular. So it's bringing us back, it's waking up those dead brain cells that dead lifestyle, that dead mentality when you raise that oil back up. And again, it hits that tree of life, or what they call in Latin, the arbor vitae. So it's in the same area, in the throat area, you know, you get that. I see you. Okay, I'm gonna stop with my symbolism right there. Let me quit playing.
And so in this area, so what we're saying then is that that's the area where there's the communication and all
Yes.
those things are taking place. So when people look at this and listening to this, how's it going to help you? That's the area you want to concentrate on when you are into your communication mode. When you are, say for example, you are a speaker and you're going to go somewhere and speak. If you're going to meditate, you might want to meditate in that area. Think about that area and focus on that area as it relates to you communicating. Even in your writing, you might want to meditate before you start to write something. And that's the area you want to focus on, because you're going to be able to communicate more effectively, I believe. So right about that.
This is why Aaron or Moses had the speech impediment, because it was dealing with the throat chakra. So, you know, and Jesus also talked about, when they said he spoke, they said he had the voice of many waters. You know, it sounded like he had the voice of many waters. Well, Jupiter happens to rule this particular area. So Jupiter is a planet, a watery planet, electrical planet. So then you see the correlation that they're trying to give you when they say that somebody has the voice of many waters, because Jupiter is an electrical, or appeared to be an electrical planet. So that's what it is.
And also when you some people say they suffer with a sinus and all this stuff, this is another area that you might want, when you're in your meditation, you might want to meditate on that area as you're drinking a lot of water, because that is an area where that rules your sinus and respiratory and all that. So you want to focus on, so this chart, what it does is it helps you to recognize what point of my body should I be focusing on when I'm dealing with A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yeah, that's right, Oliver. Now we think about this. This is the vocal part. This is a vocal organ. It is the creative organ. You know, I don't care how much you think about something, until you voice it, it's going nowhere. I could think it and think it and think it, but I have to voice it. That's why we would have people to recite scriptures and learn what those scriptures are saying, and then not just learn it, but you got to say it to me, explain it to me. And in the electronic field, you may know something, but you need to be able to explain how it actually works. What happens with point A and point B, the negative and the positive, and the diodes and the resistors, what they all mean and how they work together. So this is a creative, the vocal organ is the creative organ, because as you thought about your book, as both of you, as you thought about your books, you thought about them, you wrote them. As you were writing them, you were saying, you were talking, you were actually talking, saying this is goes here and there, and this is how you do that. You actually, if I say, well, now what is your book about? You explain it, your voice opens up. If you sit there and don't say nothing, I know I can't understand what it is that you have written. But it's just like you were saying, what we're doing to help people. We have to explain, we'll explain it to you how this helps you, how it helps you right now, what you can do right now. So
I want to ask a question, because I want our audience to be clear, because I know in chapter 8, it used to scare the life out of me. You know, sat on here was death. So I can see death riding in to get me, and hell. And I'm like, oh, and God, hell falls, so I'm gonna die, and now I'm gonna go to hell. And then that person on there, everybody was thinking it was the devil, was given a sword to make everybody hungry and kill all the beasts of the earth. Tell us what that means. What is that about? What is that death? I mean, and I know that I think that we talked about, I think Dr. Griffiths talked about the oils. So if you are staying in that lower area, I think that's going to cause us to people to die. Is that what that's talking about?
Yes.
Touch on that.
In some, I'm sorry, Pastor Archie, go ahead.
No, that wasn't me. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yes, it is. And just going back a little bit further, in ancient Egypt, they had the story of Osiris, who was cut into 14 pieces, and then his wife reanimated him to get back together. Then he gave birth to the son of God, Horus. Well, Osiris was also associated with beer and wheat or bread. So later on in Christianity, it became the wine and the bread for communion. But it dealt with a God that was whose job was to go around and teach people about agriculture, to teach people about knowledge, to teach people about these things. So it's still going into the whole spoken word thing, but he was also a God that was dead and was resurrected by his wife. So again, as the sun makes this transition from the autumn or the fall into the bowels of the earth or the tomb, it actually dies. So this is what we're dealing with here on a astrological aspect, is the journey of the sun as it goes into the winter months. And we notice with the winter months, the leaves fall off the trees, there's no grass growing, there's no vegetation for the most part, it's not growing, so everything literally dies. And we can even look at our family members and we can see that a lot of our family members have died during the winter months. So this is a season of death on a as far as nature is concerned. But at the same time, when you dwell in that lower nature, on a spiritual tip, then you will also be what they consider a beast man or a lower man, and you're actually dying physically as well as spiritually, because you're not rising above those lower chakras to get into your higher self.
So what's the symbolism of the sword, and what's the symbolism of the hunger? Is it because we're in the winter months and things are not growing, and that's why it's a hunger? And then how about the sword? What's the symbolism of the sword?
The sword symbolizes justice. It symbolizes that struggle as well, because you're going into battle. So then you're trying to conquer your lower self. In Islam, they call it jihad, and it simply means to struggle. Now they've misinterpreted and think that they got to struggle against so-called infidels, but it was really an internal struggle. And so we have our own jihad every time we wrestle with those thoughts, whether or not we're going to do the right thing or say the right thing, or whether or not we're going to stay and not do the right thing. So we're wrestling with that, as Jacob wrestled with the angel. It's the same thing. We're wrestling with it all the time.
So what we're learning here is not so much on the outside of yourself, although what's on the end is out, but those struggles, that what we're dealing with are those seasons within ourselves as we move up in the chakra, and that's important to know that and you're going to either live or you're going to die or you're going to move on to the next level.
Right, and you could even look this up. They have something that they call SAD, or seasonal affective disorder, where in certain parts of the year, people get more depressed, people withdraw, people go through these emotional changes because there's a lack of sunlight, there's a lack of interaction, there's a lack of good food, etc. That would awaken the inner us to make us want to get to that higher level. So even with that, you're right. We go through these seasons as long as well as the way that the sun goes. We follow the sun pretty much, and everybody gets happy in the springtime, everybody is happy in the summertime, but you start to kind of dread when you get in the fall, because the winter is coming and etc. So then, but when the winter gets here, then we really go through what they call seasonal affective disorder. You can, like I say,
so that tells me something, that even in the wintertime, we need to count it all joy. We have to decide, we can choose. Now that we know that that's that in those seasons in the winter and all that, we're going to feel that way, then we can choose to feel happy. We can choose to know that the sunshine is inside of us, so that we don't have to keep starting back over, guys, and and start back from here and keep, we never get to the next level because we keep starting over every winter. So, choose to be happy and move on up. So I'm sorry, but I just had to say that because that's important for us to know. That's why this information is given to us so that we can learn what we do in the winter time.
Right. And when you say, Doctor, that, and maybe Archie too, that all these things are connected, that as they open each of these seals in the Bible, that we're not just talking about an island. Each one is an island unto itself. Everything is connected, just like the wheat and the barley later on become the wine, etc., like that. Wouldn't you agree with that, Doctor and Archie?
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead, Pastor Archie.
See, let me say something. The reason they use the dun horse is just like you were saying, Mark, about the wheat and the barley. The dun horse, I thought, y'all ever read in the Bible about dun? I thought dun was the waste from the animals, but no, the dun horse, he represents the lower somatic divisions because his color changes. A dun horse is like, you ever seen that grayish, blackish horse, the color sort of mixes in? That is dun. That is a color. And when we talk about those colors in that horse, it represents our lowest somatic division. And I must say, anytime we deal with death, we're talking about producing something. Why? Well, why? Well, you're talking about producing something because in order for anything to live, death has to occur.
That's right.
All right.
Death has to be there. Death has to be there.
Okay, Archie. We got about 3 minutes left. What can you do with that? You want to go ahead and read the next verse and then
we'll read the next verse here. Okay. Yeah, okay. We're at 9. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw underneath the altar of the souls of those who had been sacrificed because of the arcane or secret doctrine of the God, and because of the evidence which they had. They cried out with a great voice, saying, "How long, O thou, the supreme, the holy, and the true, doest thou fail to judge and avenge our blood upon those who dwell on the earth?" White robes were given them severally, and it was said to them that they should keep still yet a little time until their fellow slaves and also their brothers who would be killed even as they were should have finished their course. Now that's a good spot to stop it right there and think about, because see, that's a lot right there to explain. And I know we won't be able to do it in the next few minutes, but it is a good point to start at.
All right.
I'm gonna ask the question. Every time they open a new seal, what did that mean? That it had reached another level? Yay! Yay! So every time you get to open a seal, that means you conquered that other area. So now you can move on to the next one. I love that.
So you're explaining something there, Anala, because the initiate, he's learning from area to area.
Right.
All the things that have to be conquered for him to reach that higher level.
Right. And everyone, the beast says, "Come and see." So the initiative, he's being shown these things one at a time, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And so when they say come and see, they're like telling you to come and see what I've conquered over here. So now moving to the next area.
Mm-hmm.
That is so cool. So now we got it. We know that we got to conquer these lower things and keep moving up and moving up and moving up. This is great. I'm sorry.
And knowing that you have the power to do it, knowing that the inspiration of the spiritual insight that is in there, you don't have to look down and wait for me to tell you that you can do something.
Right, that's right. Just think about if the churches, man, would just tell people how they could conquer those lower areas and move on up. Just think about what it would be like. Man, they missed it. I'm sorry, Mark.
Unfortunately, they have to keep that 10% coming in. You
better watch it. You better watch that.
And the 10% had absolutely nothing to do with money. It had to do with, as we talked about on a few classes a while back, where you don't have relations on the day that the moon is in your sun sign, because the moon is in the sun sign for 2.5 to 3 days, right?
Mhm.
So if you refrain from that 2.5 to 3 days, that's a 10th of a 30-day month.
Ah,
So that's the 10th.
ah,
That's the 10th that has to be taken back to God, because God is up here. So when that oil rises back up, you're bringing your 10th to the Lord.
how in the world did they get that, make money out of that? I have no idea.
Easy.
But you know, that don't get me wrong, for those people who are in church, it's okay, because I think some people probably need to start there so they can, but they should be taught how to conquer those lower areas in church. And that's just not happening. So that's my problem. But dang, we got to talk more about how in the world did they go from the oil to money.
It really started with the Sphinx, y'all, and that's a whole nother something else on a different level. But actually, that's where it started from. That's where God actually started from. The earth, the sun, the water, and what is the air? That's the only thing that's the only way anything lives. But we didn't know that is where God. That's what they started calling God. From there.
Oh, wow, this is so good.
All right. Well, I think we put a ribbon on it, so we need to close it down from there. But it's been a great show. All of us here with SRC want to thank the audience for sitting in on today's presentation. Our next broadcast will be on the 21st of March at 10 o'clock Eastern as usual. That just happens to be, I think the 20th is the equinox, I believe. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that next week too. So please join us as we continue revealing revelations. We really appreciate everyone's patronage and encourage you to email us your questions and comments at shiftingreligiousconcepts@gmail.com. If anyone is interested in advertising with SRC, please contact us at that same email. And don't forget that this presentation will be available on YouTube within the next few days. Even if you attended today's program, please go to the Shifting Religious Concepts channel and give us a thumbs up and subscribe. This is one of the few ways we get public attention. It really helps us to promote the SRC mission. So if you're not subscribed, go to our newsletter at shiftingreligiousconcepts.com/registration and join us. That does it for today. Once again, watch your email for our Zoom link inviting you to our next recording session. That'll be on, like I said, on the 21st. Until then, we wish you all peace, health, wisdom, and love, of course.
All right.